So again, once again, good morning, good afternoon. There's so many of you coming from all parts of the world, and I'm really excited to have you here today. As we will be spending the next hour and a half together, we are going to be looking at AI basics for nonprofit fundraising, how you can use a tool to make your fundraising a lot easier. Our goals, our agenda for today, oh, my clicker is not working. Here we go. Our agenda for today is to really look at an introduction to AI and ChatGPT. So I'm assuming that you are coming to this webinar because you're curious about what these tools are and how you can use them. This is not an advanced webinar. This is not the webinar that I'm going to teach you how to create computer code using something like ChatGPT. This is very basic and introductory, but I'm guessing for all of us, we're curious how to use this tool. And I'm just sharing with you my experiences. I am not an expert on this. I'm hoping to grow my understanding of it, but that together we can just see a little bit of how this works and how we can use it for our work as we serve communities worldwide. We'll look at some of the limitations and some of the warnings or the things we have to be careful with as we use these tools. And then we're going to look a lot at some ideas for how you can use it. So I'm going to give you some examples of, especially in nonprofit scenarios, how you can use ChatGPT. And then, like I said, we're going to spend a lot of time in questions and discussions because I want to make sure that everybody walks away feeling fairly comfortable to get started using the tool. But first, let me introduce what Cultivate is for those of you who are not familiar with our organization. So we are a nonprofit organization here in the United States in Minneapolis, and we're dedicated to empowering community leaders just like you and grassroots organizations to drive sustainable community-led change. So we do that by offering training, coaching, and resources to help nonprofits, community-based organizations, NGOs, to strengthen their leadership, build their capacity, and create lasting social change. So our mission is to foster equity, justice, and thriving communities by equipping especially local leaders with the tools that they need. So this webinar is part of our mission because we're really trying to equip organizations worldwide to be able to better do the work that they're doing in their communities. We do that through a lot of different courses and personalized trainings. You can see here a list of our content. So we do things like fundraising, evaluation, asset-based community-led development, but then also technology use. So that's our focus on this webinar today. And there's a couple opportunities that are new to Cultivate. So even those of you who are familiar with Cultivate, this is new for us. So we are launching a new program, these two accelerators that are 12-week online programs. Each one has 5 different courses. You get personalized coaching, group coaching. And if you take both tracks, you get our program certificate in social impact and leadership and organizational management. So the next one is launching in January, where we're looking at things like fundraising, communications, and evaluation. And then we have an empowerment accelerator starting in April, and that's kind of a bigger picture looking at community development, leadership, overcoming dependency in the communities, and how you can design your programs around some of this empowerment of the community. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out to us. We do organizational coaching, consulting. We have these online workshops, staff workshops, a lot of different programming that can be offered to organizations and individuals.
Hey, how are you?
So I do ask that everyone mute yourself. So if you are unmuted at this point, please mute yourself until we get to the question and answer time. All right, so let's get started in the content of today's webinar. So first of all, what is AI? So artificial intelligence. So you're going to, if you're not already, be hearing the term AI quite often. I really feel like it exploded into the everyday person last year in 2023. And even though it's been the development for a lot longer than that, but for most of us who are not in the tech world, most of us who are not diving deep into the development of technology, feel like the term AI, artificial intelligence, really became something that we became aware of in 2023. And the primary reason for that is because of a tool called ChatGPT. So AI is the bigger term for basically a computer program that helps computers, think and make decisions like a human. So it's looking at patterns and data. I cannot explain to you beyond that patterns and data how it actually works, but basically this is how, and I'll be honest, this is how AI explained itself to me, and I'll show you that later on. But really, the explosion of AI came out when ChatGPT came on the scene, and that happened last year. And ChatGPT is a program that is kind of the way that now when we think about searching the internet, we think of Googling something, right? An internet browser is a bigger tool, and Google is just one of those internet browsers. So we now have browsers like Chrome, Safari, Firefox. Well, Google is a company that owns Chrome, and AI tools are being used in all different kinds of ways or created for all different purposes. But ChatGPT is a particular company creating a particular product. But because it's the biggest one, the most popular one, it's kind of becoming synonymous with AI, just the way that Google is synonymous with internet searching. So ChatGPT is an AI program that's primarily created to understand and create text responses. We're going to look most closely like that. So it's almost like having a conversation with a computer. So it is a little weird when you get used to it, of like talking to a computer like it's a person, but that's kind of how it's made to be used. All right, so why do we as nonprofit leaders, why should we care about AI? So AI is being used in the business world, tons of different industries, and I don't think that nonprofits should be left behind. I have spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world, and I feel like most of us are, first of all, wary and scared of technology. And generally, we're much more traditionalist in our approach to how we do things. So we typically have a much longer adaptation time. We take longer to adapt to new things. And that means that we are usually left behind. The business world is running with things. Government, the for-profit sector, the civic sector is running with things. And for those of us who are a little bit left behind, then we're like catching up when everybody else is using something and we haven't yet. So I kind of see AI, like, for those of you who are old enough to remember when internet was first introduced, or when social media was, like the first boom of Facebook. Most of the time people were scared to get started. Once they started, they didn't know all the details. They didn't know exactly how it worked or where it was going, but they learned how to use it and they learned how to value it over time. So my suggestion to you is see AI like that. You don't have to understand it all. There is value and benefit in using it, even though we'll look at some of the questions arising around its ethics and proper use. However, don't completely ignore it, because it's probably here to stay, and it's going to be best for you if you know how to use it in your work. Okay, let's look at the basics of ChatGPT. If you have not ever used it, logged on to the website, looked at it, this is kind of what it looks like. So this picture on the right here, it kind of looks like a way that you text message, like on your phone, right? So the bubble here on the top is what I wrote. The bubble here on the left on the bottom is what ChatGPT wrote. So this is the basic layout or functions of ChatGPT. You're going to ask it questions, you're going to give it instructions, and it is going to generate ideas primarily by writing text for you. So it is best to communicate it like you would with a human. So when I write, I'm using you pronouns. I am talking like I would be talking to someone working with me. So it's okay to use your own natural way of speaking, of writing, when you are using ChatGPT. So you're just going to write information, you write your message here, you hit enter, and you get an answer. So there are some layout things for if you're going to create an account, which I highly recommend that you do. We'll show you that in a second. Your chat history is saved here on the left. So you can go back and find who it is that, hold on a second. I am going to be muting all of you again. Please unmute yourself when we get to the question and answer time. All right, so your chat history is saved here on the left. The answers that it generates here for you, you can either highlight and copy them, or there is this little copy icon that you can see right here. If you don't like the answer, you can hit this thumbs down button and it will give you a new one. If you wanted to read out loud the answer for you, you can hit this little, what would that be? Like a little microphone icon right there. If you wanted to redo it, this is the regenerate button. When you are giving it instructions, when you are asking it questions, you are able to attach files like Word or PDF. So let's say you're writing something. If you hit this little plus button right here, that's when you can attach something to your computer or your Google Drive folder, things like that. Sometimes in its answers, it is going to create a file for you. So that's going to be within the answer here, but there will be like a hyperlinked document that you can download that it tells you like, here's the document I created for it. And you can speak and listen to it. This is one of my favorite tools. We'll look at it a little bit more deeper later on, but you can, instead of writing, you can hit this microphone icon here on the bottom and you can speak to it, which might be a lot faster for you if you can't type very quickly. Also, you can connect it to your headphones and there is a really great app for it as well. All right, so ChatGPT has free and paid accounts. We're going to be looking at both of those today. Currently, the paid accounts for one individual is $20 a month. I do have the paid account. I think there are some benefits for it, but for you to get started, I suggest you just use the free account. It is quite robust. Once you get to know it, and if you have the ability to pay for it, then you can, but I think you can do a lot with the free account without ever having to upgrade. But you do want to create an account if you want your chat history to be saved. So let's look at the tool right now. So here is, hold on, apparently I forget that I always have to stop sharing. So here is ChatGPT. If you do not log in, it looks just like Google. So you're going to say something like, explain to me what can we explain? What hurricanes are. You just type it in and it is going to give you sometimes a short, sometimes a quite long answer, quite quickly, as you can see here, of what that answer is. Now I can copy that answer for whatever use that I want. However, since I'm not logged in, now that I'm going to, it gives me this little warning here. If I want to redo it, then I have to refresh the screen and type a new question, but now my answer is gone. So that's why you want to log in and create an account for your use here. And you're going to see here then that then you have your history saved here. So if I type in, hold on, let me get
Hi,
this thing.
Elaine. So sorry. We're not seeing your screen.
Oh no. Thank you someone for telling me that. I hate when that happens. It meant that I'm not
No
sharing
worries.
it right. Okay. Are you seeing my beautiful little landscape and do you see ChatGPT now?
Yes, we see it now. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for telling me that. So let's start that quick thing. Let's start over. I'm just going to show you guys. So if you just go to the general ChatGPT URL, it looks like Google like this, where it's just, what can I help you with? And you can type in. So what I did before is like, what is a hurricane? And it will give you the long answer. Long answers, short answers, you can copy it. But then if you want to ask a new question, you do have to then refresh it. And that information is going to be gone. So that's the benefit of logging in. Once you create an account, so I've already created an account here, saved my password because I always save my passwords and I remember them all. But as you can see here in this account, then the things that I was doing yesterday are saved. So if I want to go back to a question that I asked and see my information, it is here saved for me. So that's the benefit of creating an account, because most likely the things you're going to be using it for, you're going to want to go back to. So even if this is a free account that I'm showing you right now, all of this information is saved. So that is a benefit of it. Okay, can someone unmute yourself and tell me if you are back to seeing the blue screens here?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that, you guys. And then, okay. So, and then I should have mentioned this before, but it is available or you can download it. There is a computer app or a phone app that you can use that is quite helpful. So those are the ways that you can access it. So as I've shown you here, this is the conversation, but you're going to notice that even in the same account, when I ask it the same exact question, can you explain to me what daylight savings time is? I get a different answer both times. So this is kind of the way that machine learning works. You're never going to get the same answer the same time again. So it is new content every time because it's always building its knowledge of things. And it's not like this first question, it didn't know these things, but just however it is that it works out, it does end up being a different answer each time. But let's think first before we get into the deeper question or into the how to use this. There's some deeper questions that people are raising about AI, and we really need to think about this. So there are some ethics and limitations of AI that we need to be aware of. So I believe that AI can be a tool for furthering justice and equity in the world. However, it has to be used quite wisely. It can because it can make a lot of mistakes, and ultimately, we need to remember that we as human users are responsible for its content. If AI tells us something, we need to remember, first of all, that we are more capable and actually smarter than AI. AI is only using the information that human beings have created it and making it more accessible to everyone. So yes, I am not as smart as the people who created AI. And yes, AI has a plethora of information, but if I had the time and ability to, I could be smarter than an AI. Let's just remember that, okay? But here's the key that you need to, the thing that I think brings up the ethics, especially in our work of working in communities all over the world. So AI, ChatGPT, is built upon internet data. So whatever is put out in the internet for the last, 30 some years that internet has existed, this is what AI is scrolling through. This is the information that it is using to build up its ability to engage with us and create information. So whatever is on the internet is what is using. And the internet, for the majority of its existence, has come and has been built from privileged contexts. So it is Western nations created by people who are white, affluent, primarily men, and it is using that information to give us our answers now. So an example is AI can do creating images. If you ask AI to, or if you ask ChatGPT to say, create me an image of, a community gathering to celebrate its history, most likely you're going to get an image of white people. Why? Because internet data has predominantly shown white individuals in its content in the past. If you tell it to, give me a picture of, Black people gathering, a community gathering of Black people to celebrate its history, you might get a picture of like angry Black men protesting, right? So because the internet has primarily been that biased. So AI can have misconceptions, it can have prejudices, it can be racist. So remember that when you are working with it. It can also have more like nuanced things. So, even if you're using AI, for instance, to do a meeting summary on Zoom, that's AI. In the past, I was talking to some people and then we get the summary afterwards and I was reading it and I didn't catch this, but the people that I was working with caught this. They are in Mexico and they said, you know what? Like AI made some generalizations about the fact that we talked about, the value of community in Mexico. And what it put out was just kind of like these generalizations that, Westerners are individualistic and Mexicans are generally family oriented. Is that true? Is that not? Is there nuances to that? So be careful when you're using it because it is going to create some things that could be wrong. So it is our responsibility to read it, to use it wisely, to take our own judgment of whether the thing that we've asked it to do is correct or not. And of course, we can always keep building it up, right? So another example, with ChatGPT, I've been using it for Cultivate things. And at first, when I started using it, it would talk, we were talking about different countries, and it would often use the term third world. And in Cultivate, we never use that term. I hate it. I just think it's a terrible term. We unfortunately don't have a perfect term in this world for that, but I told ChatGPT to say, we never use third world. I want you to use terms like the global south and global north or the majority world. And now it's remembered that, and it's when I'm asking it to generate content, it uses those terms instead of third world. So there is a way that it can remember your choices for things. But it comes down to then the limitations. So a couple things. So generally, ChatGPT cannot process audio files. So you can't say like, listen to this lecture and tell me and give me a summary about it. It cannot listen to that yet. You can't send it, for instance, like a YouTube link and say, watch this video for me and tell me what it says. And this is kind of unique or interesting because most of us don't realize this. So it does not have up-to-date web content. So it's kind of this weird thing where the information, the brain that it built is based on a certain information for the internet. And there's a difference between the paid versions and the free versions. So the paid version has internet data through April 2023, currently at this point. The free version has internet data through September 2021. It does not mean that if you ask the free version on ChatGPT to say, hey, tell me about this event that happened in 2022, that it can't tell you. But in some way that I don't understand, the majority of its knowledge is limited to September 2021. And I think that date keeps kind of getting pushed up, but the paid accounts are going to have more content than the free ones. Both things, you can't unfortunately say something like, hey, ChatGPT, create me a social media post. Now log into my Facebook account and upload this post. I wish we could get to that point because that would save a lot of time, but it's not there yet. So you're going to have to use it with certain tools like Zapier or IFTTT, which is if this, then that. There are some ways that you can take the content from ChatGPT and automate it with other apps like Gmail, or later, which is like the social media account that we use, but it is very limited. So it's just not there yet. And I will say, and I'm sure you've seen this on the news, the image generation that it is doing is still quite bad. Which is probably a good thing because then that means that we're not getting fake images that could possibly mislead us to false information. But if you're asking it to create an image for you, you're probably going to get something that does not look very good. So I highly recommend that you give it some time, or if you ask it to do some image generations for you, make sure you look at it pretty closely because you could get a person with 6 fingers. The free version has some other limitations. So it cannot retain memory of the conversations, and it has a daily limit of usage. So yesterday when I created myself a free account as I was playing around with it, I reached that daily limit and basically I was like, thanks for being here, but you can't use us anymore. So if you are going to be using that, I was on it for a long time. So I think the daily limit is pretty robust, but there is a limit to that. But what do I mean here by it cannot retain memory of conversations? So let's go back to our screen here. So again, someone unmute yourself if you're not seeing my new ChatGPT screen here. So this is the free account. It does retain the information here, but its actual memory is not being saved. So for instance, if I, start having a conversation with it and I say, for all future conversations, please do not use the term third world and instead use majority world, it is not going to remember that I told it that. So right now, basically the chatbot does not remember that yesterday I asked it to explain to me what daylight savings time is. This history is here for me to review it, to copy it. I can pick up here at the bottom and start the conversation again, and it will, remember, and then that will be like today's conversation. but it does not retain this information from yesterday. And the best that I could find out was that in the free account, if you log out, kind of the memory is wiped. If you close your browser, the memory is wiped. Or if there's an extended amount of time between the chats, then the memory is wiped. But it could not tell me, unfortunately, how long that exactly is. Is it 20 minutes or is it 20 hours? I don't know. In the paid version, all of this information is retained. So in my paid account, when I say don't use third world, and I said that months ago, it still remembers that for today. So does that make sense? So there is some benefits of the paid account, and I'll show you, there's more that I will show you in a little bit, but the primary benefit is that it kind of remembers. So for instance, for Cultivate, it now remembers, what we do when I am using it for social media posts or other things. It remembers the plethora of information that we've had in the past, and it uses that to improve its content each time that I use it. So let's continue to looking at this. All right. So here, let's look at some use cases for how organizations, nonprofits, CBOs, NGOs could use ChatGPT. I think it's really great for things like social media. So in this example, I told it to, write me a Facebook post about my organization that works with low-income women in Brazil, giving them microloans to start a business. And it gave me this generic post that says like, at your organization's name, we believe in the power of women to create lasting change, and blah, blah, blah. It's a decent post, but it knows nothing about me. In the next scenario, I gave it a document to guide its answers. So I said, and I attached this business plan that we use for if you're part of Cultivate's training, you know that we use this fake organization as our example in a lot of our curriculum. So this organization, Primeiro a Mãe in Brazil, that's doing microfinance in the Rocinha slum. So I'm saying here now, using this business plan as a basis for your knowledge, write me a Facebook post about our mission and why it matters. So now the post is going to have the organization's name. It's actually pulling from the business plan. Our mission is to uplift low-income mothers from the Rocinha slum in Rio de Janeiro by providing them with the tools they need to succeed. So now this post makes a lot more sense to the organization because it used the information that I gave it to it. So when you are working with it, if you have documents, even if it's not like, here's our old social media post, but if it's your business plan, a grant application, anything like that, you can say like, use this as the basis for your knowledge. It's going to be much more accurate in the answers that it creates for you. Then there's even more when I give it in-depth instructions. So you can't see here, but I attached the document, right? But then I also said, write me a Facebook post that uses the business plan that targets global business leaders who travel or work to Brazil at times. Tell them about our mission and why it matters for them to care about business development in Rocinha. Before you create a post, ask me 3 to 5 questions to clarify your content creation and fine-tune the final post. So the key to successful use of ChatGPT is asking it to ask you questions. So if you are not giving it clear instructions, and it's just going to make assumptions and it's going to jump ahead on things. But if you ask it to ask you questions to clarify, then you're going to get much better content. So then ChatGPT asked me these questions. What tone do you want? What do you want to emphasize? Are you asking for donations, partnerships? Is there anything I should highlight in the post? Do we want to talk about Rocinha and that socioeconomic landscape more in depth? So it asked me some questions, and then I chatted back and I wrote, and it doesn't have, the nice thing about ChatGPT is that you don't have to write full sentences. Most of the time, if you misspell things, there's no problem at all. You can have really terrible grammar. And I just answered its 5 questions, and then it says, it's like, great, thanks for the clarification. And then it gave me these answers. So much more robust answers for what I asked it to do. So the key to success in ChatGPT is the more thorough you can be in what you write, the more thorough you can be in the instructions that I give it, the better it's going to be. So it gave me that answer, but then I said, I like this, but it's too long. Break it up into 3 shorter posts. So I gave it the next set of instructions, and it gave me 3 shorter posts like this. So basically, you're just like you're messaging an individual, a human, you're writing back and forth like, hey, do this. I don't like this. Change this word. Restructure this sentence until you get to the final product that you really like. So you talk to it just like you would an individual that's like, no, that's not really right. Let's try this. Or help me think about a different word in this sentence, or restructure this sentence, make it shorter, make it longer, whatever it is. One tool that I've heard a lot of people use is that using it like, write it to explain, if you're asking it to like explain what a hurricane is, and you'll say, explain it to me like I'm a 6th grader, explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old. It will give a much different answer instead of explain it to me like I'm a professional or I'm a scientist, right? So give it really clear instructions. Another great use for ChatGPT is translation. Now, there has been, tools like Google Translate around for quite a long time, but what I'm hearing is that the translation capacity of ChatGPT is much better than Google Translate at this point. So for instance, in this example, I took some text from one of our courses on dependency and victimization. And because I speak Portuguese, I could kind of compare this, right? And I said, take this text and translate it to Portuguese. And it gave me a Portuguese translation that is probably the majority of Portuguese spoken in the world, which is the Brazilian version. This is not the Portugal version. This is the Brazilian version, because most of the internet content in Portuguese has probably been created by Brazil in the last several years. But I didn't like this, and I said, now translate it to Portuguese spoken in Mozambique. And for those of you who don't know the language, you're looking at this quickly, you're like, hey, it looks exactly the same. It's actually not. So there is some nuance to how the verbs are conjugated to certain words, pronunciations, or like accents, the way that we use in Portuguese. So now this content is actually the way that they speak in Mozambique. You can't do that with Google Translate. So the nice thing is, like if you're, translating something from, let's say, to French, you can get, multiple different formats, and you can say like, do this for the French that's spoken in Congo as opposed to the French that's spoken in Paris. So that's a really great tool, and it does communicate, and it does, operate beyond English. English, it's its main language. But let's say you are not a native English speaker and you want to, let's say you're writing a grant application, you could do it in your native language. First of all, see if it understands that language. It might not have, it definitely does not have the capacity to translate from all the languages in the world, but some major primary languages it does, and then it can translate for English for you as well. So it can go both ways. This is a great way of writing your content in a language that is not your dominant language, especially if that's what you're using, for instance, in grant applications or in communicating with your donors, because then you can have just a better document or a better text for that scenario. Grants. This is how I think one of the best uses for nonprofit organizations is to use it in grants. So you can say, here's our business plan, write me an answer for this question. And then I pasted the grant question, and it says here, like do it in 2,000 characters, focus on these details. And then it gives me an answer, based on the business plan that I put up there. Obviously, I would read this to make sure that it is accurate. But I'll show you here, this is what happened yesterday, because then I said, okay, now make this under 300 words. And it started to generate, and then it stopped because it said here, you've hit your free plan limit for the day. So it was going to reset until 6:53 p.m. yesterday. And I think when this happened was around 1 p.m. So it basically told me to stop working for like 5 hours, and then I could get started again. So you are going to see this message if you're using it a lot. It is also for grants, I will say, making it under 300 words. I feel like, for those of you who are applied to grants, it is like the hardest, most time-consuming thing when you're like in an online application and they say, answer this in 2,000 characters, and you're struggling to get your answer, your your answers in and you're like, oh, I'm like 2 characters over, and you're looking through and you're finding out what word can you shorten, what comma can you take away. For those of you who've been there, you know how much time that can take. One really great use of this is that you just take your answer and you say, make this into 300 words for me, and it will shorten it up. It does make mistakes, but it can help you rewrite that answer, and it saves hours of time as you're working on those grant applications that have character or word count limitations. Another great tool is for governance. So for instance, here I asked it and I said, my organization needs to develop its first financial management and transparency policies. We do not have anything yet. Please give me a list of main policies we should create. And this is just the beginning of the list. I think it gave me like a dozen suggested policies of what I could, what I possibly should be creating. And then I said, okay, so for the first policy, ask me questions so you can write the policy. So then it asked me many, many different questions about my organization. And then as I would answer these questions, it would generate a policy for me based on my answers. And then, it gave me a policy right here of, for instance, of like board oversight of financial practices. But then it was like, oh, to present to the financial report during quarterly meetings. I was like, oh, that's incorrect. We don't have quarterly meetings. They're monthly. Please update the policy. So then it updated it and it made it for monthly reporting. So again, you just chat back and forth. I can also give it, this is Cultivates Real Policy, and I said, analyze our anti-discrimination policy for any missing areas based on industry best practices, areas of potential harm, etc. And then I pasted our current policy. And then it gave me this answer. Your current non-discrimination policy is thorough in many aspects. However, there are a few areas that are missing. And then it gave me a list of things that I should consider in changing our actual policy. So I can analyze things, not just give you answers, but it can analyze the contents that you're giving it, which I found quite helpful. It can also do data analysis. So I have an Excel spreadsheet for our evaluation course, and in it is data from a focus group. So I attached the file and I said, look at the focus groups worksheet only. It can do that. It can do just one tab instead of the whole thing. And I told it, there are notes and data from a focus group. I want you to analyze the content and give me an analysis of the main learnings from the focus group. First, ask me some questions before you write the analysis. I want the analysis to be about 1,000 words. And it asked me some questions. I answered the questions, and then it gave me an analysis of that data. I've used it for complicated mathematical calculations that I don't know how to do. And I'll say, like, I've got this data. Can you help me figure out, the average, the mean, the variances, the percentile change, all of these things. So it's really great for data analysis. Again, you want to verify it. And to be honest, with written contents like this, I can more easily verify its accuracy. For mathematical calculations, it's a little bit harder, but I kind of do trust it that most of the time it's right, because I can go on Google and kind of verify the same calculations and see that, and I saw that at least for the answers it gave me, it was right each time. Now, one of my favorite things to do with it is basically using it like a personal assistant. So what I do is, so for my practice often is at like the end of my day, I like to take walks. And I will go on a walk and I have ChatGPT on my phone. And I will pull up the app and I can talk to it. And I'll show you guys that in just a second. And I will talk to it just like I would with a personal assistant. And I will dictate whatever I want and I will ask it to do different things. So I will say, okay, here's the main things that happen throughout my day. I really want to remember these next things. So I will like summarize my workday and be able to do like creating a list of to-do things. So I'll say, today I had a call with this person and I have to remember to email them this content, or I forgot that this thing is due by November 1st. I really need to remember how to, to do that. So I can give it that summary or say, today I had a conversation about this. I really think that would be a great blog topic or social media post. Here's the thing we talked about. Turn this into 5 social media posts, and it will do all of that for me. I can ask it to write emails for me. I couldn't even, there's so many things, whatever you can think of, it can probably do as far as text generation. Now I said here, paid version only, create a to-do list. So so let me show you the screen again. Oh, here we go. So this is my free account. What I can do, so I'm going to start a new chat here, and hold on, I got to get some of these things off my screen. Here we go. And I can say, okay, help me create my to-do list for my work. And actually, let me show you how to do this. So I can click that, it goes up here, and it's going to say, oh, okay, here's a sample. Sometimes you're like, no, and if it starts generating things and you're like, no, stop, you just hit the stop button and it stops wherever you are. And then you say, wait for my list, like you would for a human being. And it's like, okay, when you're ready, let's do it, right? So, I think, let me think here. I think the little, I was going to do an audio, but I think because my audio is turned on to the presentation, it's not going to do it for me now. But basically, I can say like, write a blog, email John, and submit grant. So that's my list, right? And it might give you extra things that don't make sense. And you're like, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. In the free account, this, I can rename it. I can click here and go to rename, and I can just name it to-do list, okay? Now let's say I come back tomorrow, I can say, add to my to-do list, add to my list, pay bills. So then it's going to add to the list. Now I have pay bills on top of that list. This is going to be saved for you in the free account. So you can always come back to it and add to it, or be like, I finished the grant proposal, take that off the list, give me my newest updated list. And it's going to give you 1 through 4. This is a really great thing. But if I delete here, if I delete or this chat, this is gone. In the paid version, I can start a new chat and say, add this to my to-do list, and I can delete this chat, but it will retain that memory. And I can say, give me my newest to-do list, and it will still do that. So that's kind of the difference. If you delete the chat, this list is gone forever. It cannot retrieve that information. In the paid account, if you delete it, it's not here for you, but it will still be retained for its long-term memory use. Okay. Now I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite tools. So I'm opening up my phone and I'm going to the ChatGPT app. So it's just, well, you can't see that. It looks like exactly how it looks on your computer screen. And I'm going to say, and I hit the audio button. Hi, create a list for me of follow-up items for the people who attended my AI and fundraising webinar. I want to communicate with them after the webinar and learn how they are utilizing the tool. What are the different ways that I can communicate with them?
Here's a list of follow-up items for your webinar attendees. 1, thank you email. Send a personalized email thanking each attendee for participating and expressing your...
So I hit stop, but it starts to generate all of that information for me. And now it is saved in my account. And then I can log into my account. So now I'm going to show you guys my paid account. Hold on one second. So here's my account. Oh, I guess because I stopped it. But if I do something on my phone, so write a blog about localization. So, you know, the topic of localization, everything like that, it's starting to do it on my phone. And then if I go to, I'll just refresh. Hold on, where is it? Well, I'll close it, restart it. Now, because it's not happy with me, it's not going to show you, but it should show up right here. So maybe give it a second to update. But the idea is it does sync between your phone and your computer. Okay, let's finish up. I'm already running over, but a couple last minute things before we get into our discussions, and I can show you, you know, answer your questions, things like that. But so I showed you that example of recording it. A couple other last tips, like I said, be thorough when giving information, giving it instructions. The more information you get, the better information you're going to get it from back. Always ask it to ask you questions to clarify what you want it to do. Always verify that it's work. It's going to have mistakes, misconceptions. And if you're, for instance, like, you know, write me a blog article about, you know, the hurricane in Haiti, ask it to cite your sources. So ask it, say, like, tell me what sources you're using to find the answer. Because if you're going to publish anything based on anyone's other's work, you don't want to have copyright violations, and make sure that you are citing those sources. A couple last other tips in the settings area. So when you click on your little name icon and you go to settings, there's this thing that says improve the model for everyone, and it's going to be automatically turned on. My recommendation is that you turn this to off. What this means is that whatever you create, they're going to use that information to build ChatGPT's memory for everyone else. So if you turn this off, it means that your content is just your own. So let's say you're working on a really great idea for some like new technology or some new idea that you're later going to own the rights to. It could be using that information to teach other people about it unless you turn this off. So make sure you turn that little piece off, even if you're not doing something that is like highly confidential. I just think it's a best practice to just keep your information to yourself. There is a pasting glitch. If you come across this, email me, I'll tell you what to do. But basically, sometimes when you're like copying from, let's say, a Word document and pasting it into the app on a computer, it's not going to work. So you have to use an app called Paste Pro. If you come across this problem, message me, I'll tell you how to do it. It's really easy and it's free. Sometimes the voice recording, like if you start talking too long, it will onto the app on the phone. It is going to like interrupt you. So if you're going to do a 10-minute conversation about your ideas and then you want ChatGPT to like, you know, summarize your 10 minutes of ideas, the thing you want to do then is it will time out. So what you want to do is, like, on my phone, I have a voice recording app that's free. I will record myself talking because that won't get interrupted. It can be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, it doesn't matter. Then I go to a transcription service like Cockatoo. It's free, up to a certain amount of length of content, but I think you get 20 minutes, I think a day or a month, I can't remember, but most of the time you're not having that long of a content. It's going to give you a transcription of what you said, and then you copy the text of that transcription and upload it to ChatGPT. So that's a workaround for the way that it interrupts you. My suggestion is that you delete the chats that you will not need in the future. The way I use it is that I delete the chats I don't use in the future. I archive the chats that I might want to find again someday. So you could just archive everything. So if I showed you just like right click on that left bar and you like choose your chats that you want to delete or archive. But then I keep my open chats as my to-do list. So basically anything that's open is still content that I haven't finished or I want to engage with, whatever it might be. But once I'm done, then I archive it so that my list that's on my left side of ChatGPT, it's easier to find. And, you know, because you can't say, find me the chat from 3 months ago when we talked about XYZ. It doesn't have the capacity to do that. You have to find it yourself. So just like keeping your email cleaned up, your online folders cleaned up, keep ChatGPT clean because you're probably going to use this for years to come. So keep that left side menu easier for you to navigate through by deleting and archiving the things that you do not need. All right, questions, discussions. So I would love for you guys to feel free to ask any questions. You can unmute yourself. You can add it in the chat if you would. And I see there's a lot of chat things here. If you would like for me to like test it with a particular question or instructions, I can do that right now for you. So let me see here. I've got some questions, some greetings. All
I have
right.
question too.
Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have two questions. One, I'm just happy that I made it. I'm at work, but trying to just attend a little bit. So my question, my organization, I use my personal phone for the organization work, also for my personal, use. It's my own phone. That's what I've been using. So can I open account for the organization GPT, ChatGPT for organization plus for myself using the same phone, or is it? Yeah.
So it's just like any other app where you like create an account. So if you have two accounts, you're going to have to log off and log on for each one, right? So if you have an organizational account and you're doing that, but I'll be honest, so we have like a Cultivate account and I'm using for personal things all the time. So it is, it is normal to like, if I'm doing it for something simple, and I'll just delete it, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't need to hang on to that. But I have not seen any problems in it's if I ask ChatGPT, tell me, give me some ideas for what I should cook for dinner tonight. It's not going to like break its memory or make it, less effective when I'm using it for Cultivate work. But yes, you can use it, you have one account, multiple accounts, you're just going to have to log in and off. Taylor, I see your hand. Go ahead and if you can unmute yourself, would love to
Yes.
answer your questions.
Hi. Sorry, I have a cold, so my voice is going in and out a little bit.
No worries.
But thank you so much for the presentation. I was curious to see if you've had experience like working with ChatGPT to create like graphs or visual content, like not quite as like, Canva level designs, but just something for like a presentation. And if you've been like satisfied with that, or if you just like how that experience kind of goes.
Yeah. So actually, we just, for those of the people who are in our program, they know that we finished a course. I just published a course on evaluation about 2 months ago. And in it, I was talking about like, how do you evaluate, data and how you present it and things like graphs. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, I uploaded an Excel database, or sometimes I just copied like the row or the column of that data. And I upload it and I said, create me a graph showing the variability in this graph. Do me a line graph, do me a pinpoint graph. And it can do that. It can even give you the options of changing some of the colors of the graphs. It's not going to be you can't like modify it and make it as robust as something like Canva, but for the fact of its data analysis, I was pretty impressed in how it did it. And then I could download the graph, or I could just do like a screen grab of, I could like make the graph big on my screen and then just do like a screen grab of that content right there. Okay, good. Abel, you have a question?
Good morning, Elaine. Good morning,
morning.
everyone. I'm glad to see you here. I'm gonna have to jump to another meeting. I just wanted to take the time to thank you for this presentation, and this is good stuff. And I think, as you said earlier, as a new tool, it will have pros and cons, and it will be our responsibility to make sure that we try to understand how it works and then to try to navigate through it and stuff like that. And one thing I would like to mention is that depending on where you're working, for example, you may have your own organization and then you are kind of trying to work through and learn and move forward. So if you're working for another organization that is not your own, so there are sometimes guidelines in that organization about how to use AI in an ethical way and things like that. So it's something to keep in mind because, for example, if you're translating documents and if you are working preparing a proposal or something like that, you may you're adding information on the web on ChatGPT, and depending on how you articulate that, this may be available for other people. And as you know, there are sensitive or internal information to the organization. So these are things that we might need to take into account to make sure that as we're navigating through this, and then we try to protect the organization that we're working in. Yeah, just as I said, maybe in some minutes, I would just jump to another meeting. So thank you very much for your presentation, Elaine.
Yeah, thank you, Abel. You know what, I was actually in a workshop about AI last week, and we were talking about this too. So let's say you're going to do, data analysis on a focus group of clients that you don't, like you want to maintain their privacy. It's your responsibility, for instance, to take out, redact those names, personally identifying information, before you ask ChatGPT to analyze that information. Or let's say you're going to, you want it to analyze giving information from some of your donors. Take out the names, take out the addresses before you upload that. But then also use that privacy setting to make sure that it's not used externally. But yes, your organizations should eventually you should be creating an AI use policy and practice so people know like what's acceptable and what's not. What information can you use? Who needs to, review, authorize something created by ChatGPT or any other AI tool before it is utilized. So again, remember, we have to be smarter than the tool, and we are responsible for whatever it creates. So just like an assistant, if I asked an assistant to write me a donor letter, and unless that person, like someone like Rebecca, who's been around with us forever, like I can ask her to write something and I never review it. But when she first started it, I reviewed it all the time. So treat it like that. Someone who's new, who's not really familiar with your organization, it can do some of the work for you, but you're the one ultimately responsible to finalize it, to approve it, and then to utilize it in the right way. I got a question here from Jean asking, could we cite ChatGPT as a source of information in the context of scientific research? I don't know. Like, isn't it its own tool now? Is it like an encyclopedia that you could just like cite the encyclopedia as a source of your information? I don't know, because an encyclopedia was built based on the knowledge of someone else's knowledge. They just put it on paper. So that's kind of like ChatGPT, but I'd have to look more into that. I don't know if it's considered a credible source on its own as a citable source at this point. I personally probably wouldn't do that, and kind of see what everyone else is trying to do. So Jean, if you have more questions about that, maybe we can chat later and we can figure that out too. So I'm seeing here, Lorene is asking, is it possible to fine tune ChatGPT for specific grant writing needs? Yeah, so again, like you can, I would use it for generating answers. I think I wrote a grant, or I applied for a grant where I did, there was a question that was basically like, tell us about what your vision or how you would use these funds. And it was a lot easier for me to just take my phone and do an audio recording. I talked for like half an hour thinking of all the different things, what I was thinking about the grant, and then it synthesized that into kind of a more usable list for me before then I wrote the content and then asked it to adapt it. So whatever you're trying to do with grants, I think it's a very good tool for like editing, word count, like synthesizing or like bringing together your ideas. It's not a tool yet for like grant research. You can't say, go and find me these grants, because again, it's very limited in how much web content, like active web content, it can look at currently. So it's not a tool for research in that way, but it can generate whatever the questions are, the answers are, you can say like, look at these 10 past grant applications that we've written. And here's the new question, you know, like look at what I've looked at all in the past and give me a summary, or rewrite the question using this these 10 grant applications as a source. And it will do a great job doing that. Okay. I see a question here too. Can you show us the process of asking ChatGPT to write an email to someone? So it is not going to write an email and send it, right? So let's just look at, you know, so here is, I'm going to do, sorry, sometimes things get blocked here. Okay, let's start a new chat here. So I can say, like, write me an email for a person who just made a, you know, $1,000 donation. It's their first donation ever. I want to thank them and invite them to coffee with me. I'm going to give it some basic instructions here, or say like, I want the email to be about 500 words or less. Tone is friendly and appreciative. As you can see, I'm making spelling mistakes. I don't care about grammar too much. And it's just going to give me this. So because again, it kind of remembers who I am, it says here, you know, we can continue to empower local leaders, build sustainable programs, like, so it's using, like, it remembers that Cultivate is about empowering local leaders. So it's bringing that in. But let's say I read this and I'm like, oh, okay, I really like it. All I can do is either hit copy down here, or I just highlight it all and do Control C to copy it. But then I have to go into Gmail. I have to go into whatever email tool I'm using and paste that in. So ChatGPT can't like work outside of itself. So I can't say like, you know, now log into my Gmail account and send this email to John Doe. It cannot do that. So it's just going to generate the text for you that then you copy and paste. But if you're struggling for words and you're not feeling especially creative that day, it just gave you a great email. And if you're like, hey, I don't necessarily like what this is, and it's like, okay, this is good, but I want to emphasize our mission more. So I give it a little bit more context. Those weren't necessarily super clear instructions, but so it gave me like a new version, and I can look at it and say, you know what, I really, this is good. But then I say, you know, don't start with, I hope you're well. Wow, I'm really misspelling things here. So start with a thank you. So I can say like, okay, rewrite it, and it's going to then rewrite this question, the email for me. Thank you so much for your incredibly donation, right? So you can keep going back and forth just until you get the thing exactly that you wanted. And then you can copy it. You can say, make this shorter, make this longer, you know, use these words, change the tone, whatever you want. And then you get the text finalized. So, so Jean, I hope that, does that answer your question? If not, feel free to ask more. So Taylor asked, what are some of the most useful ways to utilize ChatGPT for someone in fundraising? I would say grant writing, drafting emails for donors. So like in our fundraising course, for instance, we talk a lot about doing like donor stewardship. And, you know, it's a really great tool. So let's say you want to have a set of emails that gets sent to that $1,000 donor for the first time. And you want this set of emails to be spread out over like 12 weeks. So you're saying, okay, give me, you know, a set of 4 emails that are going to be sent over 12 weeks that emphasize, the first one is really showing appreciation. The second one is talking about the impact of the donation. The third one is really inviting them to engage more with our donation, with our work, maybe meeting for coffee for me. And the fourth one is asking them to give again. So then it will generate those 4 emails for you, right? And if you use a tool like MailChimp, you can do automation so that those emails are automatically sent. It can do, writing a fundraising campaign. So you can, we have in our fundraising course, a fundraising campaign plan. So you can upload that to ChatGPT and say, okay, help me think of some titles for a year-end fundraising campaign. Help me think, I want to post, 5 times a week on Facebook, 12 times on Instagram. Help me think of posts for that. I'm also going to be sending, 4 emails to our donors who are current donors. I'm going to be sending 5 emails to donors who lapsed and haven't sent that, given anything in the past year. And you give it all that information and it is going to write all of those things for you, which saves a ton of time. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to have to edit it, but it's going to give you a basis and it's going to save you a ton of time. So for fundraising, I would use it primarily for those things like thinking through campaigns, giving you new ways to say the thing you've been saying it forever, right? Like, so as nonprofits, as organizations, like we have our mission, we have our programs. And I know for myself, I get tired of like trying to think of how do I say something new because I've been saying the same thing for 8 years. So it's a great way to kind of give you some new ideas of how to reformat or recontextualize what you're doing and have some new content. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Fundraising, we covered that. So Paddox, you're asking, I wanted to know how AI will be considered successful without bias to diverse languages and global coverage. I'm not really sure what you're asking here. If you can clarify on the chat or unmute yourself, but as we talked before, like, it's built on English. It is growing its capacity to understand other languages. So for instance, I'm pretty sure Swahili is on there, but it might not be as accurate as it's kind of predominantly English based. And it is available, as far as I know, anywhere in the world. So it's not like limited to geographic locations, unless obviously it gets to the point where certain governments ban it. So that hopefully that might answer some of your questions. All right. So what Edward said, I heard there's an ethical code and regulations under discussions. What are the main contentious issues and how far nations are now? There's a lot here, right? So I showed you guys what most people would consider to be like kindergarten, primary school of AI. I mean, people are using it to code programs and do some really, really complex tasks. The people who created AI probably weren't sitting back thinking, you know what, there's this girl called Elaine in Minneapolis running a small nonprofit organization, and she needs a tool that's going to help her write donor emails. This isn't what this was created for. AI was created for generation of complex computer coding and repetitive data analysis, all of those things. We're just finding ways of using it for our own benefit, right? But once you get to that bigger, those more complex things, I think that's especially when the ethical questions are raised, right? Is it doing a job for someone that could potentially lose its job? Is it creating, is there hidden racism and power imbalances in what it is doing? If right now, for instance, an example is like people are using AI to do the jobs that humans used to do. So for instance, a health insurance company that used to get requests from a doctor's office to say, is this surgery approved, is now being done by AI. And AI could make a mistake as it's analyzing that patient's chart and saying, no, that's not a necessary surgery, and it denies it. And now that person's life is at risk because they're not going to get the life-saving surgery that they needed. So there's those kind of ethical considerations when AI then is used without human intervention to make decisions and put out information or start the ball rolling on certain things that affect people's lives. So I think that's some of the biggest things. And yes, we do need to have controls over it. But I think it's going to be a long time before it's kind of in a way like Pandora's box been opened. And I think for nations, governments now to come in and say, let's shut this down and really think about it before we put it out there, that's too late in the game. That's my opinion. So we now all have the personal responsibility to use it wisely, even though we know a lot of people are going to use it maliciously. All right, that's the end of our questions. Does anyone else like to unmute themselves, put it in the chat? Would you like me to show some more examples? Feel free to leave if you need to, but I'm happy to hang out and continue to show people more ideas, or you can give me something specific to your organization and we can play with it and see what happens.
Interesting. Let me just jump into and then ask a question.
Yes.
No, because you say we have to be smarter than the machine, and I like that sentence, and maybe it's very important, something that we need to keep in mind. And my first question is are you going to prepare something for one of the courses that you are putting in our program, like communication? Because this is important. And then I've seen in the beginning how we were initiated through the technology. And I think it's going to be important that you add something on communication course so that we are familiar with this tool as well.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, this webinar is the start to give all of you guys, especially those in our program, just a basis. I'm happy to do more coaching on how to use this. But, you know, I'll have AI write its own course on using AI, and then we will add that to our curriculum. You know, I'll be honest, this last course on program evaluation, you know, usually we have between myself and Rebecca, we go back and forth on our courses on a lot of different edits. I am not a very strong writer. My grammar is not perfect. Maybe it's because, you know, English is not my first language, but it's just not my skill set. And Rebecca is an excellent editor. But because of all of the things we're trying to manage, this last course, we used AI for the first time to do the primary first edits of what I wrote. And then Rebecca did the final edits, and it saved us many, many, many hours. So it is a good tool. We just have to find ways to, you know, to use it in our program it saves me time so I can do more things, right? And I like it for that.
Thank you. Thank you. My second question is, since we are non-profit and then much more on the social justice and then the dignity, and I'm afraid the consequence of AI in terms of digital divide. And then it's just like we are going to left so many people behind because we have some illiterate people, and then now we're going at a speed which is very high, and then some people won't be able to follow. So how are you going to address this?
You know, I see this as an actually really beneficial tool for people who have been left behind because of the digital divide. Because hopefully, as you saw from this presentation, it is not a complicated tool to use. So, you know, you know, for instance, in grant applications, all of you know this, the standard for grants is that the funder decides the language, the format, the questions, and if you don't submit something that fits perfectly their expectations, you are not considered. So if English is not your primary language, or even if it is, but like me, you are not a strong writer and you make grammar mistakes, you don't really know how to format your paragraphs or write a grant application that looks professional, regardless of how wonderful your work is, they're not going to take that into consideration. But using a tool like ChatGPT can make your own content, your own ideas, your own organization fit the standard of that donor so you could actually get the funding and be more competitive to receive that funding. I see this as a good thing, right? So I see it as a tool that could potentially rise up under-resourced, underrepresented organizations, and they can use it for their own benefits to become more competitive in this nonprofit sector. Now, for your clients, for your people in your communities, you know, I mean, like you know, people who struggle with technology, my mother is probably never going to be a user of ChatGPT. It took her, many, many years beyond everyone else to finally get a smartphone. And now that she has a smartphone, I'm constantly having to teach her how to do basic things on there. It's because of her age. She didn't grow up with computers, right? So does this create a digital divide? Yes, it does. But I feel like all technology is continually dividing us between the people who can manage it and those who can't. But for all of you, how can you incorporate educating your community how to use a tool like this, right? I mean, actually, I just want to do a quick thing for those of you who are still on here. Let's do I just want to try out. All right, let's do a new chat here. And I've never tried this before, but let's try something like, hold on. So give me instructions for how a community with low resources can identify for a community, let's see, a community in Western Kenya with low resources can identify drought-resistant crops, how to cultivate it, and ensure greater food security in the region. Totally random thing, but like, could it give me, here's some steps, right? So maybe a community can now use this without having to hire professionals, hire consultants. It's not going to be perfect, but it's already giving me steps for how to do that. Then, let's see when it finishes here. It's quite a long answer.
It's good.
Right? So, and then I can say, okay, what are some crops for the region that we can use? It's still thinking. You can't like add a new question until it stops thinking. Here we go. But then I can ask, like, what are some of the crops? So it's giving me ideas. Okay, sorghum. I know that sorghum is correct. A lot of organizations or a lot of communities grow sorghum in Western Kenya, right? Millet, cassava. So this could be used by communities in a way to answer their questions, give them a new information, or just as a basis for conversations, right? For building their knowledge. And given that right now, and hopefully it will continue to be, this is going to keep going and going, but it can be a tool for the communities if they learn how to use ChatGPT. There's other tools, but like I said, ChatGPT is kind of becoming Google, right? Where it's the main known one. It is free. People with smartphones can add it to their phones. They don't need a computer to be able to do that. So it does use, I haven't compared it. I don't know how much like data it uses. So let's say you do a Google search and a ChatGPT search, like, does that use more of your mobile data? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that it's pretty comparable, and it's not going to be like, that one question ate up 5 gigabytes of mobile data. So I think it is a tool that could be used by communities if you teach them how to use it. Franklin, you asked, is this found on Play Store? Yes. So it's Google, it is Apple friendly. There are apps for both computers, but you can also just go to a web browser. So just, type in chatgpt.com and it brings that up for you. Okay, we are reaching the end of our time. Is any other questions before we finish?
Maybe the very last one. You said that every time you just try to get some answers, you get different answers every time.
Mm-hmm.
So how many times are we allowed to continue to search, or we continue to ask questions?
Well, like I showed you in that when I was playing with the free account, I was using it for probably like 2-3 hours yesterday, and I hit my limit for the day. So then it was like, nope, we're done for today. You have to wait. I think it was like a 4-hour wait time until I could start again. So In the free plan, I don't know if it is like the number of words that it generates or the number of questions that it asks, but internally they have some sort of limitation on the free accounts. But you can still do a lot with it until you hit that daily limit, or half-day limit, I guess. On the paid plan, so far, there's never been any limitations whatsoever. And often, sometimes I'll be honest, what I do with certain free programs, if there's a limit, I'll create like 2, 3 accounts for myself so I can use it, more extensively. You can have a couple people on your team, each have their own accounts, so that, if one person's working on a grant, so one person's working on social media, one person's working on some like internal content, you're not all using up that daily limit because they all have their own accounts.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else? Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to hang out longer, but thank you for being here and thank you for listening on this and for your questions as well.